Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into an ancient text to uncover a surprisingly modern metaphor. We're going to be talking about facing loss, dealing with emptiness, and figuring out what truly matters when literally everything else is stripped away. It's a fascinating journey, so let's get right into it. Right off the bat, I have a quick trivia question for you. Do you recognize the famous face behind this question mark? It's actually Sunwoo Youngyo, a legendary South Korean actress. And the story of her wedding day? Well, it turns out to be the absolute perfect lens for understanding our main topic today. So, rewind to 1969. Picture this. It's the day of her wedding. The venue is beautifully prepared. The floral arrangements are stunning, the music is playing, and all the guests are seated. It's picture perfect. But there was one massive problem. The groom was a complete no-show. It turns out he was detained at a police station over a business partner's debt, meaning he literally couldn't make it to his own wedding. Looking back on that incredibly difficult day, she later shared a pretty profound realization. She said, all the preparations were perfect, but without the groom, the wedding hall felt like a completely empty space. That right there is a brilliant illustration of our core concept. Think about it. You can have a space that is flawlessly decorated, expertly engineered, and ridiculously expensive. But without its essential presence, the whole thing just feels like an empty shell. Now, hold on to that image of the empty wedding hall because it brings us directly to the ancient text of 2 Chronicles chapter 5. The parallel here is actually striking. King Solomon spent 7 long years finishing the magnificent exterior of the temple in Jerusalem. It was an absolute architectural marvel. But exactly like that beautifully decorated venue without a groom, the temple was just an empty shell. It wasn't truly complete until the Ark of the Covenant, the ultimate symbol of God's presence, was actually brought inside. The building itself didn't make it a temple. It was the presence within it that mattered. To really grasp why the author of Chronicles hammers this point home so heavily, we have to look at the historical context. Like, who was actually reading this? Well, it was written for a post-exilic Jewish community. These were people who had just returned from exile in Babylon, and they had lost absolutely everything. Their kingdom was wiped out, and that glorious physical temple built by Solomon, it had long since been burned to the ground. They were literally standing in the rubble of their own history. So the author of Chronicles is making a crucial, urgent point to this broken community. You must know the essence of what you lost before you can even begin rebuilding. They spend a massive amount of text recounting the original temple's glory in this intense, vivid detail. But, and this is key, it wasn't to make them miss the physical building. It was to remind them of the true, enduring essence they had lost, which was the presence of God. Bringing that presence into the temple, though, that was no casual task. The text contrasts 2 very different methods. First, you have King David's previous disastrous attempt. David tried to move the ark the easy way, basically tossing it on a cart pulled by animals. But when the cart stumbled, a man named Uzzah reached out to steady it and died instantly. The easy way was definitely the wrong way. The prescribed correct method was that the Levite priests had to physically carry it themselves. And that brings us to a really fascinating piece of language. The text repeatedly uses the Hebrew verb nasah. This doesn't just mean to move something from point A to point B. It specifically means to carry something on the shoulder, to actively bear a burden. The source material highlights a highly symbolic meaning here. The presence of God isn't something you can just passively move on a cart. It requires deep, personal responsibility. It has to be actively borne on your own shoulders. The text then outlines this incredibly solemn progression. First, the priests physically shoulder the ark. Next, they carry it deep inside the temple, all the way to the Holy of Holies. And finally, they place it in absolute, unapproachable darkness. This was a hidden place where no natural light ever entered. It was a space so sacred that only the high priest could enter it, and even then, only once a single year. The presence was profoundly, intentionally hidden. But here is where Chronicles gives us this stunning visual detail in verse 9. While the ark itself was entirely hidden in the pitch black of the Holy of Holies, the long carrying poles that the priests used to bear the ark actually extended outward. The text makes a point to note that the ends of these poles could be seen from the holy place, just outside the veil. This is such a brilliant visual metaphor, the traces of God's unseen passage. Think about it. Even when God's presence is completely unseen, hidden in the dark and practically impossible to explain, the traces of those poles remain visible. It's undeniable proof of passage. You might not see the arc itself, but you can clearly see the trajectory of where it went. It leaves a visible mark on the space. Now, let's talk about the ark itself for a second. What was actually hidden inside the sacred chest? I mean, thanks to movies like Indiana Jones, the Ark of the Covenant has this massive aura of mystique around it, right? We imagine it filled with glowing supernatural artifacts. So what do you expect was actually hidden inside?
Well, if we go by traditional expectations, like the ones recorded in Hebrews 9:4, there were supposed to be three incredible items inside: a golden jar holding the miraculous manna from the wilderness, Aaron's staff, and the stone tablets of the law. But 2 Chronicles 5:10 reveals a shocking reality about the day the temple was actually completed. The golden jar of manna? Gone. Aaron's rod? Completely missing. The only items that actually remained inside were those two stone tablets.
This is a very deliberate story of subtraction. Try to imagine reading this as part of that exiled community who had just returned to a pile of ruins. They already felt stripped of their identity, their wealth, and their miracles. And here, the text tells them that even at the very height of Solomon's glory, those spectacular artifacts, the golden jar, the miraculous rod, were already gone. Only the word of God, carved on two stone tablets from Mount Horeb, remained. So the absolute crucial point the author is making is that the true essence is and always was the Word. This visual subtraction profoundly shows that the ultimate anchor for the people was never the shiny golden artifacts. It wasn't even that spectacular multi-million-dollar building. It was the enduring covenant Word. Everything else can be lost, stripped away, or burned down, but the Word remains. And history shows us just how much of an impact this message had. This exact realization led the returning Jewish community to cling to the law tighter than any previous generation. Standing in the literal wasteland of their former kingdom, it clicked for them. They realized they could no longer rely on kings or massive stone walls or wealthy temples. They relied solely on the Word. Okay, so what does this actually mean for us today? Think about our modern era. In a time of intense materialism, crazy economic shifts, and deep personal loss, a lot of people feel exactly like that post-exilic community. We often feel like we're standing in an empty wasteland. Or, going back to our very first metaphor, an empty wedding hall, surrounded by shattered expectations and things that just didn't go as planned. That is exactly why we're doing this explainer today, because the core message here offers some incredible reassurance. Even if the golden jars of outward success, financial stability, or perfect circumstances are completely gone from your life, the essential truth remains. The Word, the ultimate anchor, is still present in your inner sanctuary. You haven't lost the core of what actually matters. But we have to remember the lesson of the Levites. The source text challenges us with this pretty tough thought. We cannot put the Word on a cart. We must shoulder it in our own lives. We can't just rely on passive faith or easy conveniences. Just like those priests had to physically bear the heavy weight of the ark, we have to actively shoulder our values, our faith, and the Word through the daily, heavy struggles of real life. And when that burden feels too heavy, the text encourages us to look back at our own journey. Seriously, think about the times you survived unimaginable hardships. Those times when you had absolutely no strength left, yet somehow you made it through. That unexplainable survival? That is the modern equivalent of seeing those carrying poles extending out from the darkness. It is the visible trace of God's presence carrying you through when you couldn't carry yourself. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. When you look past the moments of emptiness, past the subtracted golden jars, and past the heavy burdens on your shoulders, can you see the unseen traces of the carrying poles in your own life today? Take a moment to really reflect on your own journey and see what enduring traces you can spot. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, keep looking for those traces.